Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast. Before we get into our second segment of today's show, I do want to remind you that if you feel so inclined, you've been doing a great job of this thus far. Make yourselves available to and continue making yourselves available to. Definitely not Avery Johnson just now. The Super Chat, Super Things, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube. They are a great way to interact with the show. You guys have been doing an incredible job, like I said. So if you want to continue doing that, leaving questions, comments, concerns, even tips and donations are appreciated as well. They're a huge support to me, my fellow podcasters, and the network as a whole. So thank you in advance for all you do for the shows and the network here. But without further ado, let us jump right into our second segment of the day's show, and let's talk about Monday Night Football tonight. A battle of the birds that the Atlanta Falcons take on the Philadelphia Eagles, and the betting odds for this game really are kind of straightforward. I think that I don't even have to give you my prediction. I already think that the Philadelphia Eagles will easily handle this game. And so it's a matter of whether or not all these odds hit for you, right? Because when you have a Monday night game like this where, it's kind of set even before it's played on the field, you can take more risk, but you also have to be aware of the fact that the spread can change any time. That being said, the Battle of the Birds tonight feels definitely one-sided, even with A.J. Brown being downgraded to being out for tonight's game with a hamstring issue. And the reason I say that is because if what we saw from the Atlanta Falcons in Week 1 continues, then I see no way that Kirk Cousins becomes comfortable in this system. Because you can't just take a quarterback, a 35-year-old one nonetheless, coming off a torn Achilles, and put him in an offensive setup that's unfamiliar to him. You can't run pistol with a guy who's never run pistol in his career. Only run it 2 times before that first game last week in, Minnesota system. So Kirk Cousins definitely feels a little bit stiff right now. Whereas the excitement and hype surrounding the Philadelphia Eagles offense is higher than ever. And now that they're back home on home soil, I definitely feel like their big play threats will become even bigger. Now, yes, A.J. Brown is a huge loss, and we don't know if anyone will be able to step up in his place. But they still have Devontae Smith. They still have one of the more underrated tight ends in the league in Dallas Goedert. And Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley form a formidable backfield, much like what we saw in Brazil last week. And so I have much less worries surrounding the Philadelphia Eagles right now than the Atlanta Falcons. And that is why they are hefty favorites, minus 6.5 points. And the over-under is 48.5. So let's talk about this over-under, because I think it's simple to say that Philly will be doing most of the scoring here. Now, I can't necessarily say whether or not, Atlanta can find their footing. It will most likely have to come down to the defense here to keep them ahead of schedule, try and get as many stops as possible. And I wouldn't put it past them, right? Even though the Steelers' offense isn't a formidable foe, they still held them to field goals, and it's not their fault that those field goals won in the game because they can only do so much. But at the end of the day, Atlanta's defense might be better than we give them credit for. It's going to be a tough test even without A.J. Brown there, but I feel like if Atlanta wants to have a chance in this game, they're going to have to win the turnover battle here. Whereas when I look at the Eagles' defense, this is a defense that is really perplexing right now, because I feel like it could be one of the best in the league, right? You have a lot of depth up front, a lot of youth up front, a lot of youth in the secondary as well, but then you're starting to try and meld them with the veterans that you have in this roster, like a Darius Slay, even though he's still technically one of the younger guys on the team, like a Reed Blankenship. Whereas with the Falcons, they acquired a lot of depth to really blend this team well. I like the pickup of Matthew Judon. I like that he's going to be kind of a mentor to A.J. Terrell in that linebacking core. And I think that Jesse Bates III, like I said, is one of the most savvy safeties in the NFL. As Shots Below the Belt says, taking the Falcons plus 6.5. What's your score prediction, my guy? Thank you for joining the chat, Shots Below the Belt. Unfortunately, that's a very risky bet, my man. I like the Philadelphia Eagles in this one. And it's not a knock on the Falcons. I love this Falcons team if it all comes together. But from what I saw last week in that game against Pittsburgh, and yes, I will give you that Pittsburgh defense, it's a tough defense. I still think that they're trying to get through the progressions here. They're going through the motions early on in the season. I think that the Falcons will have a say in the NFC South and try and contend, but they're a little bit behind the 8 ball right now. And I think that will continue tonight. That being said, it could be closer than people think. So you're not wrong in looking at the spread and saying that might be a little bit more than the Philadelphia Eagles and Atlanta Falcons give in. So it's an ambitious bet, but I appreciate the comment. I appreciate the question. In terms of score predictions, I say it will be Philly 31, Atlanta 20. I think that Atlanta will keep it close for a little bit longer than people think, but Philly's offense is the difference in this one. And Saquon's going to be the difference, especially in this one. So thank you for the question, my man. If anyone else wants to keep on commenting, keep it going. But in terms of these teams against the spread, Philly's already 1-0 this season. Falcons 0-1. And Philly right now, as Shots Below the Belt says, nice score. Thank you, my man. Philly is minus 110 to cover. Atlanta is minus 105 to cover. So if you're betting like Shots Below the Belt right now, I would say that you feel pretty comfortable saying that this could be a closer game than expected, but I want to kind of delve deeper into what I saw on the field. Because Monday night games are always going to be weird to bet, right? Because they're always the last game of the week, and the extra day of rest, could come into play. And Philly had that crazy game in Brazil, and the Falcons, really didn't get it going against Pittsburgh. So it's a weird kind of Monday night game right now. But I feel more confident from the eye test with Philly. Now, I can't necessarily indict the Falcons completely here because, yes, we do expect a lot out of them, but they still are a team that's trying to gel right now. All the pieces are kind of trying to cohere into one, and it's going to take some time. This game just doesn't feel like a winnable kind of marker for them. With that being said, ambitious betting can get you far, Shots Below the Belt. So I'm not opposed to that bet. Let's kind of do a game synopsis here. What could happen in this game? Because A.J. Brown's out, so it could kind of change the game script here for Philly. Now, what I like about Atlanta's defense is that there's so many ways you can send blitzes, and they're confident enough in their secondary that they feel like they can win turnover battles in any game they play. Raheem Morris always is going to be confident in the defensive side of the ball. Now, what Zach Robinson did in that first game might have just been indicative of maybe something he saw in the Pittsburgh defense that maybe he thought he could take advantage of, but it obviously didn't work. And I think a big part of the Falcons going forward is going to be Kirk Cousins and how he fits into whatever Zach Robinson sets up. Now, I feel confident that if, they use Kirk as a game manager, that could be the best for him because he's not going to, in pistol formations, want to roll out very comfortably, even though he's very solid in play action. So, if Zach Robinson can really focus on keeping Cousins healthy, keeping him upright, and keeping him confident, keeping him ahead of schedule, keeping him in a nice rhythm in this Atlanta Falcons offense, then they could have something going. But right now, as I see it, I don't think their offense will get going this much in this game. That being said, if the defense can keep them in contests early, that should be enough for them. As we get a long comment here, as Shots Below the Belt says, how many more bad games can Kirk Cousins have before the Falcons put in Penix? The way the NFC South is looking, shocking 2-0 starts from the Saints and the Bucks. Falcons can't afford to go 0-2, and that's a fantastic point. If Kirk Cousins does underwhelm tonight, I wouldn't be surprised if Raheem Morris says Michael Penix is starting. And I think a lot of Falcons fans might want that too. I think that right now, you're going to have to see what Cousins is a little bit longer because he did invest so much money into him. But I do think that Michael Penix can get this offense going if he's asked to step in. I think that there's a lot of positives in terms of the players that he has at his disposal. Yes, there were a couple of questions about the offensive line and their impact on Cousins' abilities in that game against Pittsburgh, but they're not playing Pittsburgh every week. The NFC South is going to just get more and more competitive, and this is a division that still feels winnable, even if, the Falcons start off in a little bit of turmoil. Yes, we put a lot of pressure on them because of what they did this offseason. That does not mean that I think that this team can grow and progress this season, no matter who is starting at QB. That's a fantastic point. There might be a little bit of unrest in Atlanta should Kirk Cousins continue to not be the answer because of the fact that they believed that he was going to be the guy to jumpstart this offense with all these weapons in it. So it's going to depend a lot on how the Falcons use Kirk Cousins and how they get him comfortable in order to win games. Tonight, I'm not as confident in them. I am taking Philly in this one, even though the spread is very favorable for both teams. So make risks if you want to. I'm not opposed to them because this game definitely feels like it could be a weird one. But let me know what you think in the comments. Coming up next, though, we are going to be looking at some prop bets for tonight's game that was largely affected by the injury to A.J. Brown. I'll tell you why right after this short break.